Hey, so our little circle grew by 12 today, which is freaking amazing. And I wanted to do this episode for like a long time now, and I never had the energy to do it somehow, but that changed this morning when I woke up and checked my phone. So freaking thank you. And yeah, it is about the abduction theory. For a long time now, people, me included, thought that the abductions that are happening all over the world are connected to NHI. Why? No one knew. They somehow kind of just medically and examined anybody who like crossed their path. They gave them like one or two wise words, and then they sent them their way. But yeah, and Dr. Stephen Greer has made a clear statement since his appearance on the Shawn Ryan show, and somehow nobody like picked up on it, and I was like, that was very weird. So I kind of thought like, so I'm gonna do it. And because the things he's saying are very like, so I hope you're going to enjoy this video. Ah. And if you find yourself asking who the hell Dr. Greer is, don't worry, he's just the guy who was advising any important person since President Clinton, and that includes every president since President Clinton. So he was never a media guy. We, the public, don't know him, so you shall be forgiven. Yeah, I enjoy.
Let's talk about Project Bluebeam.
Mm-hmm.
Can you describe what that is?
Well, that's another subculture term that's been attached to a series of projects that involve what the Pentagon, what they call a deceptive indication and warning, or a false INW, which is a false flag. And it's the ability to stage, through very advanced technologies, an alien attack or an alien event. And it's a whole series of them. Now, what most people don't know about, since late 50s, early 60s, like the Barney Hill case and all that, those were all human assets abducting innocent people made to look alien. And so that psychological warfare was authorized in 1953, 54. 1954, we mastered gravity control. So we started deploying these assets to begin to condition the public that there's a scary threat from outer space. Everyone on planet Earth would think that it's alien, and it isn't. Recently there was a whistleblower came out talking about the aliens murdering humans, and he was referring to a case that I know for a fact were our operations, these illegal secret government operations that were down in South America, and they've done it in Africa also, where they have killed innocent people in villages to make it look like an alien attack. I want to word this very carefully. A little knowledge is an extremely dangerous thing here, because this is a hall of smoke and mirrors and deception. And you have to then wind this back. What would a clandestine operation have if unsupervised since the late 1950s, where they've had some of the most brilliant scientific minds I've ever met working these projects? They've had almost an infinite amount of money, trillions of dollars that have gone into the R&D, studying both human breakthroughs and also extraterrestrial vehicles, propulsion systems, communication systems, material science, what things are made of, how they're made. Well, you figure after 80 years of that and trillions of dollars, you're going to have some payoffs. Most of the people in the military, CIA, special operations, corporate, what have you, who work in that world are not part of some vast conspiracy. It's incredibly tightly held. But in my view, that's their Achilles heel. By definition, it has to be kept pretty small, pretty tight, which makes them vulnerable if, we'll get to this later, if the U.S. government actually has the will to go the distance to get this under control.
So this is the lovely couple Dr. Greer just mentioned, Betty and Barney Hill. This incident happened in 1961, and I probably you probably might know what white America at that time thought was wrong with this couple in 1961. The reason why I even mention this is because you might find a difference in the treatment these two individuals got from the NHI. And yeah, there is one good recounting by Betty Hill, still left on YouTube, from 1999. Yeah, enjoy.
All our communication was verbal,
Verbal.
right?
Oh, interesting.
Yep. They spoke English in a limited way. Like, a foreigner coming here and not too well acquainted with our language.
Let's just go back to those type of entities. They were your classic alien, gray-shaped,
No.
cat-like. No, they weren't. Okay.
They're a form of human being.
They were a form of human being.
Right.
Did they have cat-like or Cheshire-like eyes?
They had larger eyes than ours, smaller nose, and smaller mouth. No protruding part of the ear and no hair.
So
But they're people.
nothing like these classic grays you see your Whitley Street.
I don't know. I've never seen those.
Do you remember at that point, did they specify what their agenda at that point was? Were you going immediately in for the examination, or
They had taken us strictly to actually, they wanted to find out how we were like them or different from them physically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Did you feel that you were chosen for this, or you happened to be in the wrong area at the wrong time, or the right area at the right time?
Well, now I figure it was the right time in the right area. But I think I brought it on myself. I'm waving to them and yelling to them and hey, who are you? And
You get into the examination room. You're separated from Barney.
right, he's taken into the second room.
Your examination, and again, all this comes out in later dreams and hypnosis, but immediately do they remove your clothes and perform... What happens? You'll have to... I'm tainted by all the popular lore of abduction stories.
Well, see, I don't know anything about those stories.
That's good. Well, you're better off.
But I was taken into this first room, and it was quite bare. There was a small table, there was a stool, and then the wall, there were doors in the wall that would slide back and forth. And they put me on a stool, checked my eyes, ears, nose, throat, my feet, my hands. And then he put me on a table and said they were going to check my nervous system. And they used some kind of equipment to do this. And then he tried to insert a needle-like instrument in my navel, which caused pain. So they stopped doing it. And then the examiner left and went into the room where Barney was.
Mm-hmm. Did Barney recall any struggle akin to the struggle that you had, where you had a torn?
No, because they had him under this control, and he wasn't. Was very upsetting to him because he couldn't move.
Mm-hmm. So they had implemented paralysis, some sort of temporary paralysis on Barney to subdue him, whereas to you they gave you a little more leeway as far as you weren't.
Well, I was smaller than Barney, so I didn't get such a big dose apparently.
So they saw him as more of a fear, perhaps.
Right, he was bigger than them, taller.
The interaction with you and the question and answer session was more than Barney. They did not give Barney the opportunity to inquire.
No, there was no conversation with Barney. I enjoyed myself. I had a great time.
Mm-hmm.
He joked, we kidded.
Really?
Yeah. I invited him to come back. I could say, please, please, please come back. Oh, I have so many friends who would love to meet you.
So this was not a traumatic experience at all.
No.
It was an enlightening experience.
Oh,
spiritually uplifting,
right,
perhaps.
Right. It was. Nobody can tell me there's not life on other planets.
Okay, I gotta be quick now. The sun is already going down. Up next is Kelly Cahill. She's a famous book author, and she got abducted while being seen by 5 other individuals. And just take notice in how she describes how these NHI talk.
The last thing I remember was a hand being placed on my shoulder, and I went absolutely ballistic, and the next thing I can remember was being back in the car.
You felt something touching you?
Yeah.
So that was while you were still lying on the ground?
No, I was actually sitting up in the grass with my knees apart, so I was actually in a sitting position.
And the last thing
before I was touched on the shoulder, I heard this male voice say, "Will someone do something about it?" I know it sounds ridiculous.
Interesting. Do something about
Someone
her.
do something about her. Exactly.
And you think it was one of those beings that was...
Yeah.
Did you
Well, I
hear-
couldn't see. I could only hear. I
Now,
was totally blind.
Was this a voice you heard coming from outside?
Yes, it was an audible voice. It wasn't,
And it was clearly in English, obviously.
Yes.
Now, when it comes to my UFO lore, this guy I trust. Dr. Dan Burisch is so hardcore, he worked for Majestic 12. Like, directly. Majestic 12 is a group first leaked by John Lear. If you didn't know, I highly recommend watching the clip. And yeah, he was so hardcore, like, no one in Senate, like, no one questioned who he was, like, who he claimed to be, where he claimed to have worked. No one questioned that. He had the clearances. He did go to the places he claimed to go. That was what held people off with Bob Lazar. And still he had no voice. Like, they did not give him a platform, like a real platform to share his story. You can clearly hear them talk about really making an effort to be able to testify so he can get it off his chest so he can retire. Like, he wants to tell the people. He wants to get, like, responsible for this. If it turns out to be false, he's gonna get in trouble. Why would he do that? He already made it. He already made enough money. He could just retire. So yeah, they didn't give him a voice. And look how he is describing how the NHI he met was talking to him.
I would enter into the clean sphere, and I was not supposed to communicate with the J-Rod at all. I was not supposed to know his name. The reality is we were communicating from the time that I entered into the ambassadorial suite external to the clean sphere, talking back and forth freely. I could hear whatever he was projecting at me from thought, and he could very clearly hear what I was thinking. I say hear, meaning perceive. I was supposed to stand over by a hologram projection system, which was run as like a teleprompter system over to my right that would be run inside of the clean sphere glass. Hold my hand up and mimic certain signs. And it became a joke. It really did. It became a joke. Those folks who were watching from the gallery running the show thought that I was standing there and mimicking the signs, and this was the only communication underway. The gentleman with which I was associated was approximately 3.5 feet tall. He had a dark brown appearance, very ruddy appearance to his skin. He was in a highly pressurized clean sphere.
And how was that image presented to you? Did it appear...
I was inside the image.
You were inside the image?
That's what it felt like.
Like virtual reality?
Yes. Everything that he showed me when this was the incident, when he projected it into me, it felt like I was there. My sensations were heightened. Quite extraordinary.
Could you estimate what his level of intellect was?
Smarter than me. He was smarter than me by a long range.
Did he have a wide range of knowledge?
The mathematics that he showed me blew my mind.
Was that right?
He showed me concurrently not only the equations for the rule of nines, but he also did so diagrammatically, and he did so with three-dimensional, like a VRML system, where I was watching cubes come together. So that if I was not understanding the script, I would understand it as a child learns group theory in mathematics.
The communication that he established with you when you were in contact with him, could he extend this communication over any distance?
60 feet.
60 feet?
Definitely 60 feet.
Okay.
Because it was 60 feet from the center of the clean sphere to the introduction ramp going down into the ambassadorial suite.
What is it actually like to communicate with one of these beings telepathically? And what do you hear something in your head? Do you hear images, see images, or?
I could hear my voice. However, the cadence, the affect was something that distinguished it other than me. I actually felt non-resident for a moment. It was almost an OBE type feeling. And then I could feel myself pull back and experience the sound. It was physical. It was more real than touching an object. And that's the only real time that I felt anything, more physical than physical.
Now, one thing I keep hearing is, how does this secret covert group even manage keeping this information quiet or secret for so long? To those people, I always say, they haven't. There is billion people who came out and talked about this, but they haven't been in big media, main media outlets, not even in the para main media outlets, except for The Hill, News Nation, and yeah, Dr. Greer has also an explanation to why this is occurring and how this is being kept secret.
And, years ago in '93, I was at the Wrigley Mansion, and I'll tell you, Shawn, it was a very interesting meeting. It was late at night, 10, 11 o'clock at night, and there was a conference room full of suits. And they approached me, and this is the fall of '93, just before I briefed CIA Director Woolsey. And they said, look, you don't need to be talking. They knew all about this meeting that was going to happen. And you don't need to be talking to the president and the CIA director about this. They don't know anything, and they're not going to know anything. If you want to know, you talk to us. We're the WFO. We're the work for other contractors. We're the people who are working on these technologies and doing the technology transfer. And then they were trying to convince me to side with what they were doing. And I said, no. I said, this is a corrupt enterprise. And then he offered that, he says, you're a doctor, you can take out as many credit cards as you want. We'll zero them out each month because we run the supercomputers that back up the entire banking system. And we can get an infinite amount of money through certain techniques. And so we'll just zero them out. I said, then you're going to own me, aren't you? Because isn't that credit card fraud and banking fraud? He says, no, we're just trying to help. But at the end of it, he said, look, we have given at least, now remember, this is 30 years ago. We have given at least 10,000 people $10 million apiece or more to secure their cooperation with this project.
Wow.
And that was 30 years ago.